In February 2017, Gary and I went to Venice to take a photo workshop with Jim Zuckerman. The photo workshop was focused on carnival costumes. After the workshop, we explored Venice on our own, and then we went to Rome, where the highlights included the Baths of Caracalla, the Pantheon, the Forum, and many other fabulous Roman sites. The Carnival workshop was a combination of photo shoots and lectures. Most mornings, we would be up early and walk to St. Mark's Square, where the models gather. The models come from all over the world, but primarily from France and Germany. They make their own costumes, and many have lights hidden in the fabric that you can only see before the sun comes up. No skin or real hair is revealed, so it is impossible to tell the age or gender or actual appearance of any of the models. The workshop leader arranged several private shoots for us, and this one was in an old Venetian palace, the Casa Grada. Another arranged shoot was aboard a Venetian gondola. One morning, the models went to the small island of Burano, and we photographers followed to get shots of the models and the colorful houses for which Burano is famous. No Venice Carnival photo shoot would be complete without a boudoir shot, so Jim arranged one in our hotel. On another day, the models went to the Arsenale, and we were there to photograph them. By that time, we were beginning to recognize several models, but there were still many we had not yet seen. A sunset shoot at San Giorgio brought out the models once again. And after each shoot, the models would fade back into the crowd, ready to find their next photographers.
Wow!
When the workshop was over, Gary and I stayed several days in Venice just exploring on our own. We changed hotels, staying at the Hotel Moresco, across the Grand Canal from the train station. Of course, the hotel was decorated for Carnival. We enjoyed riding the water taxis and seeing the Venetian palaces along the Grand Canal. One that caught my eye was the Salviati Palace. The Salviati Glass Company was the source for all the gold and colored tiles used by the Stanford family to decorate the Stanford University Chapel and the museum. It was February, but we had some beautiful sunny days. Even on the overcast and chilly days, Venice is beautiful. Because it was Carnival, the shop windows were full of masks. On one of our walks through the city, I saw this interesting sign on a church door saying, "Entry into the church when wearing masks or fancy dress is strictly prohibited." Reflections and gondolas are iconic parts of the Venice scene, so I made them one of my photography subjects. We were sad to be leaving Venice, but we were excited about our trip to Rome. Leaving Venice.
15:20. When Italia wishes you a pleasant journey. Dear customers, please lower the volume of mobile phones and the tone of voice as not to disturb other passengers.
This turned out not to be an issue for us, as we were the only passengers in our business class car. The Trevi Fountain is the largest Baroque fountain in the city and one of the most famous in the world. It was built between 1732 and 1762. The theme of the fountain is the taming of the waters, and the fountain sits at the terminal point of one of the aqueducts that brought water to ancient Rome. The central figure is Oceanus in his shell chariot. The Pantheon was a central focus of our trip to Rome this time. It was less than a block away from our hotel, so we stopped in often. Luckily, a visit to the Pantheon is free. The Pantheon was built on the site of an earlier temple that had been commissioned by Marcus Agrippa during the reign of Augustus. The present building was completed by Emperor Hadrian and probably dedicated around 126 AD. Hadrian retained Agrippa's original inscription over the entrance, which has led to confusion over the actual date of construction ever since. The building is circular, with a portico of large granite Corinthian columns. A rectangular vestibule links the porch to the rotunda, which is under a coffered concrete dome, with a central opening or oculus to the sky. Almost 2,000 years after it was built, the Pantheon's dome is still the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome. The height to the oculus and the diameter of the interior circle are the same, 142 feet. The Pantheon is one of the best preserved of all ancient Roman buildings, in large part because it has been in continuous use throughout its history, and since the 7th century it has been used as a church dedicated to St. Mary and the Martyrs. 2 kings of Italy are buried in the Pantheon, Vittorio Emanuele II and Umberto I, as well as Umberto's queen, Margherita. The oculus at the dome's apex and the entry door are the only natural sources of light in the interior. The oculus also serves as a cooling and ventilation method. During storms, a drainage system below the floor handles the rain that falls through the oculus. In the piazza in front of the Pantheon is the Fountain of the Pantheon. It was commissioned by Pope Gregory VIII in the late 1500s. It was designed by Giacomo della Porta in 1575, and it was sculpted out of marble by Leonardo Sormani. The Capitoline Museums are located just south of the Piazza Venezia, where we admired the national monument to Vittorio Emanuele II. While we were in Rome, we took 2 days to visit the museums that are located on Capitoline Hill at the top of an impressive staircase. The museums are owned and operated by the municipality of Rome and are based on a collection of bronzes that were given to the citizens of Rome by Pope Sixtus IV in 1471. The first of the 2 museums, the Palazzo dei Conservatori, was opened in 1734. It has paintings done by Caravaggio, Titian, Rubens, and Tintoretto, as well as a fabulous equestrian statue of Marcus Aurelius. The second of the 2 museums, Palazzo Nuovo, is devoted primarily to statues, sculptures, mosaics, and busts. One of the most famous sculptures is the Dying Gaul. The courtyard has an incredible reclining statue of Marforio, a river god, and fascinating statues in each niche. There is an underground passage between the two museums that provides what I consider to be the very best view of the Roman Forum. At the Palazzo Massimo, we saw the bronze Boxer at Rest, and marble statues that date back to the late Roman Republic and Imperial era. The museum is famous for containing the frescoes of the Villa de Livia, depicting an exotic garden with colorful flora and fauna. Livia was the wife of Augustus, and the frescoes were probably painted around 30 BC. The garden was painted on the walls of an underground room to provide a cool space in the summer. One evening at dinner, we were talking to other tourists, and they suggested we go to the St. Ignacio Church to see the dome. The dome is actually a trompe-l'oeil painting on a flat surface. When viewed from the proper angle, the dome looks completely real. Walking through Rome, near our hotel, we would pass Lago di Torre Argentina. We stopped to admire the ruins and were immediately taken with the many cats. We learned later that the complex was the location where Julius Caesar was murdered in 44 BC. The area was excavated in the 1930s, and after that, feral cats took over. According to the legend, the cats embody the ghosts of ancient Romans. Today, the cats are cared for by a cat sanctuary. We visited the Baths of Caracalla. The baths were built around 200 AD by Emperor Caracalla. When the baths were completed, it was a gigantic complex of baths, shops, libraries, and other recreational spaces. Amazingly, the complex remained in use as a spa until the 1800s, even though it had been seriously reduced in size over the centuries due to wars, plunder, and earthquakes. History tells us that Caracalla was a cruel leader, and he was murdered by one of his soldiers in 217 AD, only 17 years after the baths were built. Walking from our hotel to the Roman Forum, we would pass through the Piazza Navona. The long piazza is built on the site of the Stadium of Domitian that was built in the 1st century AD. It was made a public space in the 15th century. Piazza Navona has a wonderful fountain in the center that depicts the 4 rivers. There are 2 other smaller fountains, and they were both built in the 1500s. On our walk, we stopped at the Santa Maria in Trastevere. It is a minor basilica and one of the oldest churches in Rome. The floor plan dates back to about 340 AD. Much of the structure was built around 1140 to 1143 AD. The carved Ionic capitals may have come from the Baths of Caracalla. The beautiful mosaics were done in the 13th century by Pietro Cavallini. One day, out walking around, we went to the area that were the original docks of Rome. Nearby was the Forum Boarium, which is the place where cattle was traded. In the Forum Boarium, there are 2 temples, one to Hercules Victor and the other the Temple of Portunus. Both of them are from the 2nd century BC. We found several restaurants in Rome that we liked and would go back to. Here are some pictures. We were willing to pay tourist prices and eat tourist food just for this view of the Pantheon.